Luxury SUVs come in all shapes and sizes these days, but this is where the big boys played. Literally. I'm talking about large SUVs. Yes, there are segments above this one and segments below, but the large luxury SUV is the yardstick. It's where ruggedness meets plushness. You get more than a touch of tech and more than a pinch of practicality. We've got 3 German luxury SUVs and 2 of them are what you might expect, but one is from a mainstream brand. That model is the all-new Volkswagen Touareg, which is easily the oddbod in this segment, given that it's not sold by a luxury brand. We've got the Touareg Launch Edition version. It has 5 seats, no 7-seat option, but it's more affordable than pretty much everything else in the class, but arguably lacks the badge cred that some customers may be looking for. That's not the case for the all-new Mercedes-Benz GLE though. While it may have been known as the ML in years gone by, the GLE is definitely a worthy contender in the class, now with improved interior design and tech, and this completely revamped version looks the part too. We've got the entry-level 300D diesel model, which comes with 7 seats as tested, but we're keeping it even and treating it as a 5-seater. And then there's the stalwart, go-to luxury SUV for so many customers, the BMW X5. It's also a new generation version, having launched in 2018, but this is our first chance to see how it stacks up against the competition. Ours is the 30D, which remains the entry-level version at the time we're testing it, but at a higher price than its rivals, and ours is the M Sport version. It's a 5-seater as tested, but you can get it as a 7-seater too. Now before you go smashing your keyboard with where's the Q7, I don't see a Velar and there's no Jaguar, that's right, we've chosen these 3 models because they're the most important and newest players in the segment. That's why we've got them. Clearly the VW has the price advantage in this trio, but you'd expect that. It's not a luxury brand, even though the Touareg is a luxury SUV. And at the moment, it's a one-size-fits-all offering. There's only one variant available. So, we know there's a price disparity here, and that gets even bigger when you consider the optional extras fitted. Here are the as-tested prices for these 3 models. But there's more to a luxury SUV than simply how much it costs. You can read the full written review for a comprehensive breakdown on equipment levels across these 3 models. They're all diesel-powered, automatic, and each has all-wheel drive, but there are some marked differences here. The VW is the only model with a V6 engine, where the BMW runs an inline turbo 6-cylinder. The Merc we've got is the entry-level 4-cylinder, but it still stacks up pretty well on power and torque. Now, we wanted to get a 6-cylinder Mercedes, but it wasn't available at the time of testing. Can the 4-cylinder Mercedes compete with the big 6s when it comes to driving? Let's find out. For this test, we took all 3 models out for an urban loop, including roundabouts and speed humps, before hitting the highway and heading onto some winding roads to see how they stacked up. I didn't just test these cars on my own though. We had a bit of a strange family gathering in each of these over the same roads. And here's what we thought, because it was very insightful. The GLE 300D's 4-cylinder engine just doesn't offer the level of luxury motoring that you might expect at this price point. It's not that it's a bad engine, because it offers decent pulling power when you need it and reasonable refinement too, but you can't escape the fact that it has to work a lot harder than a 6, and the 9-speed auto gearbox can be busy as a result. Also busy is the suspension, which seems to struggle with sharp edges due to its big 21-inch wheels, but it also lacks adaptive suspension, and that means it twitches, wobbles, hits bumps rather than soaking them up, and it's just generally a bit more nervous than you would expect. And in our short off-road drive, the ride was harsher than you'd think it should be, for an SUV that is. In gentle day-to-day driving, on smoother roads under less stressful conditions, it's pretty much acceptable, just not as good as we'd hoped for. The BMW offers comfort and composure to its ride in spite of its huge 22-inch wheels with run-flat tyres, with adaptive dampers fitted to this M Sport kitted out version. There's an element of crunch when you hit a sharp edge, but that's not really that surprising, though it doesn't feel as luxurious as some might wish. The 30D's engine is creamy smooth in its power delivery, and there's virtually no lag to contend with from a standstill. It has a real what lies beneath character to the engine, which is potent and powerful, and the 8-speed auto is almost imperceptible, offering faithful and decisive shifts. It's good for the driver, but other occupants had complaints, mainly from the rear seat because of its firmer feeling rear suspension and flat back pew, which combined for an unpleasant experience. That was also the case on our off-road loop, though it does have an off-road mode to help things be a little bit more comfortable in terms of the suspension. The Touareg's air suspension in off-road mode was supple and well sorted, with very little to complain about. Overall, we judged the Volkswagen Touareg to be the best all-rounder, and that's pretty astounding considering its competition in this test. It is living up to the idea of a Volkswagen that can be a luxury SUV, and a lot of that comes down to its ride comfort. And that comfort comes from the fact that the Touareg in Launch Edition spec has air suspension all around, and it's adaptive air suspension. So it'll figure out if you hit a bump at the front that you're going to hit it at the rear as well, and it'll adjust the suspension to be really comfortable to combat that. One other thing you need to consider with the Touareg is that its steering can be a little bit heavy at times, especially at lower speeds, and that means that if you hit a roundabout at say 10 or 15 k's an hour, you might overjudge what's going to happen with the steering at times. It isn't a deal breaker, not by any stretch of the imagination, but you just need to think about it a little bit more than you would in the other cars in this test. But the levels of refinement, comfort, and everything else combined to give this Touareg a really impressive overall experience. There's even little nice things like the fact you get dual visors so you can block out the sun all around you. I guess the thing is that you feel that there's a lot of engineering that's gone into this car, and Volkswagen Group has used the same platform that the Touareg rides on for the Bentley Bentayga, the Lamborghini Urus, and the Audi Q8. And what it feels like is you're getting a bargain version of one of those cars. Now, it doesn't mean that $100,000 or so is a bargain for a lot of people, but it is a value-packed luxury SUV. There's no doubt about that. Over our testing, we kept a tally of how these vehicles fared when it came to fuel consumption. Now, right here, you can see the official combined figure for each of these cars. That's what the manufacturer says it will use. And right here, you'll see our actual real-world results, which we took at the fuel bowser. You can see just how close it was. We'll give you a sec to let it settle in. If you're buying a luxury SUV, you expect nice finishes and quality materials, but what about when it comes to fitting a family in? You need pleasantness and practicality. Each of these 5-seat SUVs has a big boot, which is great if you've got young kids or even teens. There's a bit of variance between them in terms of the boot capacity, not to mention these figures and how they translate to what's usable and what isn't. And it could be the difference between it being right for you or being ruled out. To give you an idea of how they compare in the real world, we loaded up the CarsGuide luggage in each of these models, as well as our trusty pram. You can see from the vision that some weren't as good as others when it came to the boot task. Take a look at the media screen setup in the Volkswagen. It is phenomenal. It's a 15-inch screen. Now that's as big as my first PC that I got way back when I was a youngster, and it controls pretty much everything you need to use on a day-to-day basis in the car. Now that's good and bad because it means you miss out on physical knobs and dials, which you might like, except for a volume controller down here. Now, this screen also has Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, sat-nav, all that stuff, but it's not standard. It's an option, and it is part of a package which includes this digital display in front of the driver. You also get a head-up display with it and a few other bits and bobs. But generally in here, it feels really plush, even though there are a few materials which are a little bit lower par than the other cars in this test. But you're not going to confuse it with a Golf or a Polo because things look and feel really nice in here. Now, in each of these cars, you'll see me sitting behind my own driving position, so that gives you an idea of what it's like for someone my size to sit behind someone my size. I'm 6 foot tall and I've got plenty of room back here. I've got lots of knee room, fair amount of headroom, although this side bit does impinge just a tad on your head space, but generally it's a nice comfortable spot. You've also got ISOFIX child seat anchor points, 3 top tether points as well. You've got quad zone climate control, and that's standard on this Launch Edition version of the Touareg. So that means you've got cooling and heating and vents back here so people in the back can set their own temperatures. That's pretty neat. The GLE brings this big MBUX media system. So it has a 12.3-inch screen in the middle and another one in front of the driver's face. And it looks absolutely amazing in combination with the rest of the cabin. Nice elements like these big vents, and well, they're not real vents, they just look like vents, but there are plenty of vents down here, and this wood finish that runs across the dashboard of this test car is absolutely beautiful. Down here it almost feels like the deck of a yacht. It's really quite luxurious in a rugged sort of way. Now this MBUX system has the Hey Mercedes system, and that means that it'll pick up your voice when you say Hey Mercedes. It'll offer you voice controls. It does take a little bit of learning, but there are plenty of ways to do things in this car. You can use these controls on the steering wheel, you can control it with the touchscreen, or you can control it with this touchpad here. It's all pretty high tech and a little bit rugged as well. So remember what I said, this driver's seat is set for someone my height, 6 foot, and in the GLE I have a little bit more space, a bit more knee room, a little bit less toe room, but headroom is about the same as the Volkswagen, which is good for this class. But what I will say is that you sit your bum a lot further down into the seats, which is a more comfortable position to be in. You don't feel as though you're perched up quite as much. And yeah, there are 2 extra seats in the back here. Mercedes says that anyone up to about 180 centimeters should be able to fit back there. I'm 182 and I didn't fit very comfortably. So keep that in mind if you're thinking of this as a real 7-seater. It's more a 5+2 option. But the back seat in here is better than in the Volkswagen. It's more comfortable. Let's see if the BMW can live up to it. If you've been in or owned a BMW over the last 15 years or so, you'll pretty much feel at home in here. Not a lot has changed in terms of the interior design that the brand has gone for in this iteration of the X5. And that isn't to say that it feels dated, but it doesn't maybe feel as up to date as the competitors in this test. There's still 2 big digital screens in front of the driver, one for media and one for all the driver information that you'll need. But the media system, you get Apple CarPlay, but only for a year included. Then you have to subscribe to it, which is odd. But you do get wireless CarPlay, which is a nice bonus. You don't get a wireless phone charger, that's an option, and so is this leather finish on the dashboard. And it sort of feels like you have to pay more and more and more just to get something that feels almost close to its competitors. The back seat space in the BMW, remember, my seating position, my seating position. I've got about the same legroom as the Volkswagen, a little bit more headroom though, and the width feels good because the seat is really flat. Now the good thing is that you've got more width. The bad thing is that there's no support when you're going through corners or over bumps, so you do sort of slide around in your seat back here. It's comfortable, but it just doesn't cut it compared to the others here. They're family SUVs, and safety is vital if you're a family car buyer, and you probably expect plenty of it if you're buying a luxury car. So here's how these 3 compare when it comes to safety technology. In the specs we have here, all of these models have loads of safety gear. Each has auto emergency braking or AEB, plus lane departure warning and lane keep assist. There's a reversing camera for the Touareg, but surround view cameras for the other 2. Each has autonomous parking, front and rear cross-traffic alert, blind spot monitoring, and plenty more besides. The airbag count is the bit that separates them the most, and all 3 of these vehicles have the maximum 5-star ANCAP safety rating. Be sure to read the full review for all the details. When it came to picking a winner out of these 3 superb luxury SUVs, it was difficult, but we've come up with a decision. The winner isn't the Mercedes-Benz GLE, although it does have the most impressive interior tech of these 3. It was let down by its ride quality, or lack thereof, and its engine. It just doesn't feel like you're getting enough for your money. Speaking of price, the BMW X5 30D is expensive, but you do get an amazing 6-cylinder engine for your money. You also get decent ride compliance and a fairly luxurious feel to the cabin, although it is a bit expensive. You don't get the value that you get in the Volkswagen Touareg, which nails it for value. It offers so much for your money, and also a supremely impressive all-rounder, and it nails the brief for the luxury SUV, even if it's not from a luxury brand. So it's our winner in this test. Tell us what you think in the comments section below. Be sure to tell us which one of these 3 you would choose, and don't forget to hit subscribe.